Hey guys, tonight we drift into the warm, faintly fishy haze of ancient Rome. Not the marble palaces or roaring colosseums, but something far more aromatic. You're about to spend a full day as a garum merchant, purveyor of Rome's most beloved condiment fermented fish sauce. That's right, the empire may run on conquest, but its kitchens run on the stuff at the bottom of your fermentation pit. It's early, still dark. You wake to the gentle rustling of straw under your back and the far-off groan of someone already cursing at a rooster. The air is surprisingly cool, carrying the faint brine of the nearby Tiber River, mixed with something less poetic, probably your tunic, which smells like it spent the night hugging a dead sardine. It did. You sit up slowly, rubbing your face, nose already bracing for the sensory onslaught of another garum-filled day. You stretch, and your joints pop like damp amphory lids. Welcome back to your life in Ostia, Rome's bustling port city and the fish sauce capital of the ancient world. Your home is modest, a single room above the workshop. Walls plastered and patched so many times they look like a mosaic of failed repairs. There's a small window, just big enough to let in a shaft of pre-dawn gloom. You peer out and see the city just starting to blink awake, shadows stirring, dogs sniffing at carts, and one goat already plotting escape. You light a small oil lamp and blink through the flicker. There's no coffee, no eggs. Breakfast is yesterday's flatbread, slightly softer than the bricks it was baked against. You gnaw half of it while pulling on your tunic and belt, pausing only to flick a beetle off your sandal. Your breath smells like anchovy dreams and vinegar regret. You step out into the alley. A soft crunch underfoot tells you someone's been here before you. You don't look too closely. Down the block, you hear the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer. Across the way, a woman is already yelling at her children while trying to balance a basket of cabbages on her head. The cabbages are winning. You make your way toward the courtyard behind your shop. It's still too early for the full stench of the vats to hit, but there's a gentle whisper of what's to come, like the ghost of a tuna passed away under suspicious circumstances. You pass the neighbor's cat, who eyes you with contempt. She knows you'll feed her fish guts later. She's also judging your choice of sandals. You bend to unlatch the storeroom door. The wood creaks like an old senator trying to stand. Inside, stacks of amphorae crowd the shelves. Some are sealed, some not so much. One particularly bloated-looking jar has developed a suspicious bulge near the bottom. You poke it gently with a stick. It responds with a moist sigh. This is your empire, your realm of half-rotted riches. Historians still argue whether garum was more of a luxury condiment or a daily staple, but in your world, it's both. You've sold it to slaves, senators, taverns, and even that one guy who swore it cured his gout. It didn't. He lost the toe. You hoist an amphora onto your shoulder. The clay's rough, and the contents, well, let's just say the amphora feels alive. You carry it toward the front of the shop where your assistant, a lanky teenager named Lucius, is already sweeping the threshold. He's also dry-heaving slightly. "Morning, master," he mumbles through a sleeve. "Still better than the gladiator barracks," you reply. He used to clean out chamber pots there. As the sun begins to peek over the tiled roofs, the heat stirs the city like a giant hand wafting up every smell it can find. You catch whiffs of fresh bread, donkey manure, unwashed humanity, and of course, your own bubbling inventory. The shop sign swings slightly in the breeze. It's painted with a fish and the Latin words liquamen purissimum purist sauce. You chuckle. Pure is a generous term. A customer appears a wiry woman with the no-nonsense energy of someone who's bargained down a tax collector before breakfast. She squints at your display amphora and leans in. Too far. Her eyes water. "Still fermenting?" she asks, voice pinched. "Only the best. Aged 5 months and 1 goat kick." She grunts, tosses a few coins on the counter, and walks off with a sealed jar. That'll end up in someone's lentil stew by sundown. Maybe even a banquet, probably not one you're invited to. As you rub your aching shoulder and take in the rising clamor of merchants and mules, you realize the day has only just begun. And yes, your nostrils are already losing the will to live. You duck back inside, and the shade offers the briefest illusion of relief until you remember what lives in here. The storeroom is already warm, the heat beginning to stir the contents of your amphorae like someone whispering insults into a wasp's nest. You take a deep breath. Mistake. Today's first task, check the night's deliveries. You left 3 new amphorae resting against the back wall yesterday, full of chopped mackerel and sardines, layered lovingly, if that's the word, with coarse salt. A fish lasagna of doom, if you will. In theory, they should stay sealed, fermenting quietly in the warm air. But theory is a luxury you left behind sometime around your second exploded lid. You kneel beside the first jar, giving it a gentle prod. It holds, encouraged. You inspect the second. This one's developed a crust around the rim, never a good sign. You shift it slightly, and there it is, a wet slurp at the base, followed by the tiniest, saddest dribble. Lucius, you shout, already dreading the answer. Yes, master. This one's leaking. A pause, then again. You glare toward the sound of his voice. Tell me you didn't stack the amphorae without checking the bases. I didn't, he replies quickly. I forgot to not stack them. You pinch the bridge of your nose, which does not help the smell. Clay amphorae are temperamental. They're handmade, uneven, often reused from wine or oil shipments. You once received a shipment in an amphora that previously held cremated remains. That batch smelled extra philosophical. You sigh, then grab a scoop and start transferring the oozing fish slurry into a spare jar. Lucius appears with a mop and a face like he's marching into a battlefield. Together, you slosh and scrape and try not to think too hard about what's under your fingernails. It's not glamorous, it's barely sanitary, but it's honest work, sort of. The garum trade is enormous. Rome imports and exports it throughout the empire, from Britannia to Syria. Some say the best comes from Hispania, but you know better. Yours has that personal touch, which is to say, you stir it by hand and sometimes mutter at it when no one's looking. The final jar is fine, a miracle. You mark it with a smear of red pigment, a crude system, but it tells you which ones to bottle by the end of the week. Then, just as you're about to stand up, something brushes your ankle. You yelp like a startled senator and stumble back. A blur of fur shoots past your foot and vanishes behind a sack of salt. Oh, good, you mutter. She's back. The cat. No one owns her. She owns the alley, the rooftops, and now, apparently, your storeroom. She's small, gray, and shaped like a loaf of bread with murder in her eyes. You've tried shooing her. You've tried ignoring her. Once, you tried bribing her with pickled herring. She took the fish and bit you anyway. Lucius shrugs. At least she keeps the rats away. She is the rat, you grumble, rubbing your ankle. The cat hisses once, more for formality than threat, then disappears behind a crate of amphora stoppers. You know she'll nap there until something squeaks, or until you forget she exists and step directly onto her tail again. With the emergency leak now contained, you return to the courtyard where the morning sun has finally cleared the rooftops. The warmth spreads like slow honey, glinting off every clay surface and pooling in every dusty crack. You feel sweat gathering already, trickling down your spine like a snail with ambition. It's time to prep the workshop. You swing open the double doors at the front of your stall and let the light flood in. The counter is simple wood, warped and stained with years of hard selling. Behind it, shelves hold small bottles, sealed with wax and wrapped in linen for the fancier clientele. You've even scrawled a few labels mostly legible. One says, extra bold. Another says, for boiling. One, Worryingly, just says, "Don't." A neighbor strolls by and waves. You nod back, trying not to look like a man who's spent the morning knee-deep in fish rot. She's a baker, and her stall already smells like honey cakes and warm grain. You inhale deeply, letting the scent wash over you like an apology from the universe. "Your cat was on my roof again," she calls cheerfully. "She's not my cat." She disappears with a chuckle, and you return to organizing your wares. Lucius is wiping down the counter, making vague gagging noises at regular intervals. You consider assigning him a week's worth of vat stirring just to help him build character, or scar tissue. One of your old amphorae rests in the corner, its sides blackened with age. You keep it there as a reminder. Years ago, a batch of garum fermented too fast in the summer heat. The pressure blew the lid off, showering the wall in an oily rain of horror. The stench lingered for weeks. A rat died, possibly from shame. Historians still argue whether Roman garum was always made from mackerel and anchovies, or if anything vaguely fish-shaped was fair game. You, of course, are an equal opportunity fermenter. If it swims and can be salted, it's sauce in time. By the time mid-morning rolls around, the shop smells exactly as you'd expect, like someone tried to pickle Neptune. You've had 3 customers so far, 2 regulars, and 1 very lost tourist from Gaul who nearly fainted from the scent and bought a jar just to get out faster. Sales technique. You're sweating through your tunic. Lucius is trying to make a broom stand on its bristles. The cat is somehow now on the roof, staring down at both of you like a disappointed landlord. And then you hear the dull clatter of wheels on stone, coming from the alley. A delivery? Probably. Hopefully not another amphora of regret. The rattle of wheels grows louder as the cart rounds the corner, revealing a scrawny mule and an even scrawnier driver. The mule looks like it's seen too many summers and not enough water, and the driver doesn't look much better, more bones than man, wrapped in a tunic that may once have been white before losing a battle with olive oil and despair. Delivery for fish guy, the man calls, squinting at the wax tablet in his hand. You raise a brow. That's me, or close enough. He pulls the mule to a reluctant halt in front of your workshop, and you step forward to inspect the goods. The cart bed holds 5 amphorae, each sealed with a thin slab of pine and wax. The faint scent of sea salt and regret wafts up to greet you. "These fresh, you ask?" He snorts. "They're fish. Fresh is a matter of opinion." You lift the lid on one and peer inside. Layers of salted anchovy. Promising? You poke it with a stick. Still firm. You nod. "Put them out back. Carefully. I'll dock your pay if they spring leaks like last time." He grumbles but complies, guiding the mule around to your rear gate with a chorus of creaks, curses, and a sneeze that nearly tips him off the cart. Lucius, now holding the world's saddest broom, watches him go. "Master, do we really need more amphorae?" You gesture at the rows already fermenting. Fish don't salt themselves. Lucius, also, we're low on the good stuff. The stuff that smells like it wants to bite me. That's the expensive kind. As the delivery is unloaded, you grab a cloth and wipe your hands, smearing a little brine across your tunic in the process. Great! Now you match the amphorae. You glance down the alley, where the street is waking into full chaos. Vendors shout over each other, children chase stray dogs, and somewhere in the distance, a flute player bravely ignores how out of tune he is. Time to make your way to the workshop. Not the front counter. The actual work happens down the block, at the old fermentation yard near the river. You sling your satchel over your shoulder, filled with wax tablets, sealing tools, and your emergency lemon peel for the nose. Then you motion to Lucius. "Come on, we need to check the vats." "Do we?" he whines. "Do you want to go back to the gladiator latrines?" He shuts up. You head down the alley, winding through Ostia's maze of streets. The city is lively this morning, sunlight bouncing off sandstone buildings, laundry flapping between windows, a group of schoolboys reciting Virgil very loudly to annoy their tutor. A few elderly men sit playing dice under a fig tree, pausing only to glare at a passing chicken who seems overly invested in their game. You pass a bathhouse, its walls painted with cheerful murals of half-naked gods doing very unrelaxing things with urns. A public latrine next door exudes a smell that would make your vats proud. Civilization at its finest. By the time you reach the fermentation yard, you're sweating through every stitch of fabric. The yard is enclosed on 3 sides, with tall stone walls and open sky above. The sun beams directly into the center, making it the worst possible place to spend time unless, of course, you're a barrel of rotting fish. Rows of shallow stone vats line the ground, each filled with a different stage of sauce in progress. Some look like wet salt with specks of fish. Others resemble a soup that lost all hope. The farthest vats are black and glistening under the heat, already attracting flies with Olympic-level dedication. You lean over one and take a deep whiff. You instantly regret it. Still ripening, you wheeze. Historians still argue whether garum was left to ferment for weeks or months, but your nose tells you this one's been pushing its luck for both. You grab a long wooden paddle and stir the surface. A slick bubble forms and pops. The smell could knock out a senator. You move to the next vat. This one is better lighter in color, thicker, with less fly interest. You dip a ladle in, let it run over your fingers. The texture is good, slippery, but not too oily. A faint tang in the back of your throat confirms it's on track. You nod to Lucius. Get the jars ready. He opens a crate nearby and starts sorting clay containers for bottling. You notice he's breathing through his mouth. Coward. Suddenly, from behind the wall, a high-pitched shriek. You both freeze. Another shriek, followed by a splash. You peer over the wall. A small boy no older than 7 has just belly-flopped into the canal beside the yard. He's flailing, laughing, and entirely unconcerned with the alarmed donkey watching him from the bridge above. A woman appears, hollering in Latin that makes your ears blush. She drags the boy out by the ear and smacks him once with a wet sandal. Order is restored. You return to your vat. Why does this place exist? Lucius mutters. Because Romans love flavor, and we provide the stinkiest kind. Garum is used in nearly everything from sauces to marinades, even medicine. Some say it heals wounds. Others say it causes them. Either way, it sells, and people pay good money to smell slightly worse for dinner. You seal the second vat with a stone slab and weigh it down with bricks. 1 down, 17 more to inspect. The cat appears again, somehow having made her way here before you. She's perched on a jar lid, licking a fishbone with the smugness of Cleopatra on a yacht. You scowl. She yawns. As you stand to stretch your aching back, the sun shifts, casting golden light across the yard. The air shimmers. The vats bubble. A gull screams. And somewhere out there, a wealthy Roman matron is drizzling your finest garum over a platter of boiled leeks, blissfully unaware that her beloved condiment spent 2 weeks fermenting next to a cat and a canal. You trudge to the far end of the fermentation yard, where the oldest vats reside wide stone basins set into the ground, each with a crusted rim and a dedicated cloud of buzzing admirers. This is where the real magic happens. If you can call slowly rotting fish and salt magic, you glance at the nearest pit. It's darker than a moonless night and smells like Poseidon's armpit after a sprint. You brace yourself and lift the cover. The smell hits instantly, curling your eyelashes and briefly unmooring your soul. You stagger back a step, then lean in again. A true professional never flinches twice. This vat is the crown jewel of your operation. 6 months old, with a thick, briny surface and a rich, oily sheen. It hums with microbial confidence. You dip in a ladle, and the garum flows like syrup, gold brown and glistening in the sun. You allow yourself a moment of pride. This batch might just be your best yet. You even consider bottling it in the fancy jars, the ones with painted fish on the side, and corks that don't disintegrate when wet. A rare treat for your wealthier clients, or at least the ones who can read. As you're admiring the sheen, a scuffling noise draws your attention to the corner of the yard. Lucius, you call, not taking your eyes off the movement? Is that cat digging in the salt pile again? No, master, he replies, voice flat. That's the other cat. You turn. Indeed, a second feline has entered the scene. This one fluffy, orange, and twice as fat as the first. It is attempting to bury something near the barrels. You do not want to know what. You clap your hands, and it bolts, scattering salt and vague shame behind it. You sigh. We're being overrun. It's the fish, Lucius offers. No, you say, it's the lack of boundaries. You return to your vat, reseal it, and make a mental note to check for paw prints later. You don't want another garum with essence of tabby situation. The senator who got that jar never wrote back. With the worst of the inspections done, you turn your attention to the storage alcove along the wall. Here, sealed jars await shipment, dozens of amphorae labeled with destinations like Pompeii, Alexandria, and even Britannia. You run your fingers along the chalk markings, mentally calculating what still needs to be prepped. A loud creak interrupts your inventory check. You look up to see the old workshop gate swinging open. A familiar figure walks in, arms crossed, nose wrinkling like it's been personally insulted by the air. It's Decimus Varro, your friendly neighborhood sanitation inspector, which is a polite way of saying man with a tablet and a vendetta. Still fermenting the city's soul back here, I see, he says dryly. You force a smile, Decimus. Always a pleasure. Did the wind carry you, or just a deep sense of duty? He snorts and walks over to your oldest vat, sniffing it with all the drama of a man inspecting a corpse. This one smells illegal, he declares. Only in some provinces. He scribbles something onto his tablet, frowns, and pokes at the amphorae stacked nearby. You're still using the old stoppers, he asks. You nod, they hold just fine. And crackin' heat. You shrug, so do I. Historians still argue whether Roman food safety standards were a genuine concern or more of a bribe-driven theater. You lean toward the latter, especially when Decimus finally pockets his stylus and extends his hand. You hand him a pouch of coins without breaking eye contact. He pretends to weigh it thoughtfully, like it's filled with judgment rather than denarii. Very clean operation, he says with a wink. Thank you, you reply, deadpan. We comb the cats. He leaves in a swirl of sandal scuffs and bureaucratic power, and you exhale the breath you'd been holding since he arrived, one less fine to pay this month. As Lucius finishes stacking fresh amphorae in the shaded corner, you start organizing your tools for bottling wax. Rope, stamps, sealing knife. Each jar is sealed with care, though the garum inside doesn't seem to appreciate the effort. One of the vats lets out a wet gurgle, as if offended at being ignored. You pause to wipe your hands, just as a shadow passes overhead. You glance up. A flock of gulls wheels above the yard, already circling like tax collectors, sensing overdue fees. One of them dives. You barely move in time as it swoops past, dropping a gift that lands perilously close to your best vat. Lucius yelps, grabs a broom, and swings wildly at the sky. You both miss. The gull caws triumphantly and disappears behind a rooftop. I hate birds, Lucius mutters. They sense weakness. The sun is climbing now, and the yard is sweltering. Your sandals stick to the flagstones. Every breath feels like sipping soup through your nose. You wipe your brow and look toward the gate. Time to escape the fermentation pit. At least for a while. You nudge Lucius. Let's get lunch before the sauce eats through the floor. He doesn't argue. As you walk out together, you glance back at the yard. Cats napping on barrels, gulls circling above, amphorae gently weeping brine in the heat. A kingdom of stink? And somehow it's all yours. You and Lucius step back into the main street, blinking like moles emerging from a spicy underworld. The midday sun is high now, baking the city's stones until even the shadows seem tired. A man trudges past carrying 3 loaves of bread under one arm and a squawking chicken under the other. A woman chases after a dog who's stolen her sandal. Normal. You head toward the Popena, one of the countless little taverns scattered through Ostia. Not quite a full thermopolium, those fancy eateries with stews bubbling in sunken pots, but good enough to serve something vaguely edible and cheap enough not to attract patricians or philosophers. Lucius groans as he slumps against the wall. If they're out of lentils again, I'm revolting. You faint when people raise their voice. The tavern smells like boiled chickpeas and charred onions, with a whisper of mildew to round things out. The interior is dim and welcome. A row of jars behind the counter promises wine, vinegar, oil, and something labeled probably olives. You choose not to investigate further. You grab a table in the corner far from the hearth, near enough to the window to catch a breeze if one happens to stumble in. The tavern owner, Cassia, waves lazily at you with one hand while pouring wine with the other. She's been running this place longer than you've had armpit hair and has roughly the same tolerance for nonsense as a brick wall. What'll it be? Fish boy, she calls. Bread, stew, and a miracle. You reply. She grunts in acknowledgement. Lucius plops into the seat across from you and rests his face against the table. Cassia soon returns with 2 wooden bowls of lentils, 3 slices of bread, and a jug of the house red, a wine that tastes like sour grapes arguing with vinegar. But it gets the job done. You eat in silence at first, letting the stew warm your insides and the wine numb your memory of that one vat that burbled threateningly earlier. Then, predictably, the chatter from nearby tables starts to swirl into your ears. One merchant is loudly claiming that his cousin invented a method of fish salting that makes the garum ferment in half the time. Still tastes like foot, someone counters. A group of workers is arguing about cabbage tariffs, which you hadn't realized was a topic people could get so passionate about. One insists the real issue is fraudulent cabbage weights. Another mutters about big lettuce controlling the market. You smirk into your bowl. Historians still argue whether Roman taverns were centers of civic discussion or just glorified gossip holes. Judging by today's sample, it's both. At the next table, an old man begins reciting lines from Ovid to impress a younger woman. He gets halfway through Metamorphoses before forgetting the name of the river god and substituting Greg. She seems unbothered. Cassia drops another hunk of bread on your table without being asked. You look like someone who's wrestled an eel this morning. Close, you say, inspection day. Oof! She pats your shoulder like someone patting a war widow. Drink more. You oblige. Just as you're wiping the last smear of lentils from your bowl with a crust of bread, the tavern door slams open. A sweaty man bursts in, arms flailing and tunic flapping like a panicked sail. Is the fish sauce man here? He shouts. The room goes quiet. Everyone turns to you. You raise a hand half-heartedly. That's me, unfortunately. He barrels over, clutching a wax tablet. I've got a complaint, he says, panting. The amphora you sent to the Triclinium aureus. You nod. A fancy banquet hall on the other side of town. Leaked through the floor and into the granary below. Do you know what fermented fish sauce does to barley? I imagine it improves the flavor you offer. He doesn't laugh. You scribble a quick apology on a fresh tablet, promise a replacement jar, and send him off with half your afternoon's dignity. He storms out, trailing the scent of despair and mild paprika. Cassia raises an eyebrow. You should start bottling that smell. Call it Tears of Neptune. Lucius chuckles, then immediately chokes on his wine. You lean back and let the noise of the tavern wash over you. The drone of conversation, the clink of clay mugs, the occasional distant shout of someone yelling at a donkey. You could almost fall asleep right here, head tilted against the cool stone wall, the heat pressing in like a warm pillow. But there's work to do. You stand slowly, bones cracking in all the usual places. Lucius groans. Can't we just live here now? No, you say, but we can steal a few olives on the way out. Cassia rolls her eyes and tosses you a handful. Outside, the light is blinding. You squint against the glare, regretting every decision that led to you becoming a merchant of ancient seafood smoothies. The scent of the tavern clings to your tunic, a brief improvement over your usual perfume. As you head back to the workshop, you pass a street musician playing a sad little tune on a flute. His tip jar is empty. You toss him a few coins and receive a nod of deep appreciation. It's a small thing. But sometimes, even a man who stinks of fish deserves a little music. Back at the shop, the sun is now fully committed to its campaign of suffering. The light bounces off the whitewashed walls and clay tiles, making the whole street shimmer like a mirage. The air smells like hot bread, sweaty wool, and somewhere, faintly, urine. A donkey nearby seems to be having an existential crisis. You're just approaching the entrance when you hear a voice nasal, familiar, and already halfway into an argument. I asked for anchovies, not whatever this is. You pause, deep breath, exhale, then step inside. At the counter stands one of your more passionate suppliers. Marcus, a man who looks like someone tried to carve a nose from raw dough and accidentally kept going. His tunic is stained, his face is red, and his expression says he's ready to duel you over the moral value of fish. These are mackerel, you say gently, lifting the lid on the crate he's pointing at. Good ones, too, salted within the hour. I said anchovies. He snaps, small, silvery, judging me with their little eyes. You raise a brow. You know anchovies are out of season. He crosses his arms. My cousin got anchovies this morning. Your cousin also sells roof tiles and once glued his sandals to the floor. Lucius, standing quietly by the shelves, snorts. Marcus whirls to glare at him. I was promised consistency, he grumbles. I'm risking my reputation delivering for you. You're risking something, you mutter. You pick up one of the mackerel, inspect it. It's firm, fresh, still smells like the ocean rather than the inside of a cat's mouth. You hand it to him. You want anchovies. Wait 2 weeks. You want fish sauce to sell. This is your catch. He hesitates, then sighs, dramatically, like a man being asked to sacrifice his only child to Neptune. Fine, but you owe me extra on the next shipment. I'll owe you a jar of garum with your name on it. Make it 2. 1 in a complimentary insult. Deal? He hauls the crate over his shoulder and storms off in a huff that's 70% theater, 30% mackerel. You shake your head and turn back to Lucius. Add that to the ledger. 1 dramatic delivery, 0 anchovies, 1 headache. Lucius flips open the wax tablet. How do you spell drama? You're about to answer when a breeze wafts through the open door. You stop. Sniff. Sniff again. Do you smell? You hesitate? Flowers? You both step outside. A cart passes by, heaped with fresh herbs and posies, probably bound for a temple or upper-class villa. The scent lingers just long enough to make you aware of everything else, namely, how much you smell like a vat that gave up on life. Maybe we should bottle that, Lucius suggests. Floral garum. No, just flowers, like as a backup plan. You chuckle. We're in too deep, lad. You head back inside and begin prepping orders. Amphorae must be wiped. Stoppers checked. Wax seals applied. Some shipments go to local markets. Others across the empire. Your best customer is a man in Antioch who once wrote you a letter praising your sauce as bold, briny, and emotionally confusing. You take it as a compliment. You lift a finished jar and carefully press your stamp into the wax your humble fish emblem, simple and smirking. It's a little crooked. So are you. Master, Lucius says suddenly, did you ever think about doing something else? You glance at him. Like what? I don't know. Something that doesn't ferment? You think about it. Once, you admit, I wanted to be a mosaic artist. Lucius blinks. Really? You nod. Yeah. Thought I'd spend my days making floors for villas. Pictures of dolphins and grapes. Maybe a satyr or two. What happened? You hold up your fish-smeared hands. Turns out I'm better at sauce than symmetry. He nods slowly. Still, would have been nice. Trust me, you say, corking another jar, in a villa somewhere, someone's walking barefoot across a dolphin I didn't make, while dipping their bread in my sauce. Life's weird. Historians still argue whether garum merchants were respected tradesmen or the butt of dinner party jokes. You're fairly sure it's both. But you make enough to pay your taxes and buy wine that doesn't double as paint thinner. That's more than some can say. There's a knock at the door. Another customer, face flushed and panting like he sprinted from the forum. I need 2 jars, he gasps. Now! You nod. Fish or eel base? Whatever makes my mother-in-law stop complaining. Eel it is. He tosses coins onto the counter, grabs his jars, and vanishes. You stretch your arms, back cracking like a dry amphora lid. The day is far from over. Deliveries to pack, stoppers to trim. At least one cat to remove from the rafters before she births kittens into your export stock again. Still, there's a rhythm to it all, an odd peace in the predictability of fish, salt, and sun. You've survived another anchovy argument. That counts for something. You've barely turned your back when the next challenge arrives, not through the door, but up the alley in the form of a low, wheezing shout. Oi, fishman! You close your eyes. That voice belongs to Vitus, the supplier who once tried to pass off a barrel of squid as seasonal mackerel. The same Vitus who insists he can't taste the difference between spoilage and rich umami. You brace yourself, turn around, and watch as he stumbles toward you, dragging a handcart behind him. It's covered with a hideous old tarp that smells like it's been wrapped around an argument. I bring the goods, he declares, puffing with pride. Lucius mutters, this is never good. Vitus flings back the tarp with theatrical flair. Inside several sacks and a layer of fish that look tired. Not rotten, exactly, but close. You lean in, squint. Are those sardines? Some might have been. Others look like confused anchovies or possibly confused worms. And there's definitely a crab leg poking out where it shouldn't be. These were caught at dawn, Vitus says, clearly lying. Dawn when you reply? Today? Maybe yesterday. He smiles like this is a reasonable window. You pick up one of the fish by its tail. It droops, lifeless. You wiggle it. It wiggles back slowly. That's not normal. You're offering me giltfish, Vitus? He shrugs. They've got character. They've got fungus. You stare at him. He stares back. Somewhere between you, the fish starts to leak. Historians still argue whether Roman food sellers were held to public standards or simply shouted at until they gave up. You favor the shouting method. Today will be no different. I can't take these, you say flatly. You're delivering compost with eyes. Vitus looks around theatrically, as if the pile might defend itself. What if I knock off 1/3 of the price? Half? Fine. And you clean my alley. There's something squishy down there that may be your responsibility. He sighs, beaten, and begins unloading the sacks. You grab a bucket and start sorting salvageable fish from those destined for the fertilizer pile. Lucius joins you, holding a long stick like he's taming a beast. One sardine is fuzzy. It goes straight into the discard pile. Another is stiff and pristine. It might actually be fresh. You toss it into the usable barrel and wonder how it survived the others. As you work, Vitus lingers awkwardly. You know, he says, you should really consider branching out. I've got contacts in Tarentum eel vinegar, sea snail butter, fermented oysters. You hold up a hand. Vitus, stop. But think of the synergy fish sauce and oyster jam. Lucius visibly shudders. I sell garum, not nightmares, you say? He shrugs. Suit yourself, but if the Emperor's court starts eating fish jam next year, remember who had the vision. Oh, I'll remember, you say, every time I wake up screaming. Vitus finally shuffles off, muttering something about culinary innovation and bumping into your doorframe on the way out. You and Lucius stand over the buckets, breathing heavily through your mouths. Well, Lucius offers, at least it wasn't fermented squid again. You nod. Progress. You carry the usable fish to the back, layering them in fresh salt inside an empty amphora. It's slow, rhythmic workfish. Salt, fish, salt, seal. You hum a bit to yourself, something tuneless, but calming. Your hands are slick, the clay amphora cool against your fingers. It's oddly meditative, like making very aggressive soup. You pause only when Lucius lets out a small, "Oh no!" You turn. He's holding a half-sealed jar, one that was meant to be shipped this afternoon. Its stopper has cracked. You walk over and peer inside. The sauce has started to dry along the edges, forming a thick, crystalline rim. Well, you say, looks like we've got another bloomer. Do we toss it? You hesitate. No, this one's going to Cato the Younger's nephew. He once said it reminded him of battlefield wounds. I think he likes it extra chunky. You carefully reseal the jar with a fresh stopper and press the wax into place. You glance up at the storage shelves, now half full again. It's not perfect, but it's progress. You scratch your arm absent-mindedly, realizing too late you had fish scales under your sleeve. Great, now you sparkle. You catch Lucius watching you. What? He shrugs. Nothing. Just, you always seem like you hate this job, but also like you'd fight to the death if someone insulted your garum. You blink, then smile. Of course I'd fight them. You can insult my clothes, my sandals, my questionable bathing habits, but insult my sauce. You shake your head. That's war. He grins. Good to know. I'll warn the philosophers. You glance toward the doorway. The light outside is changing again. Afternoon fading into early evening. The sun's rays slant longer now, turning golden as they fall across the shop floor, casting shadows that smell faintly of fermented power. One of the amphorae shifts slightly, a soft gurgle rising from its depths. You pat it gently, like a dog that burps when you hug it. All right, sauce, you murmur. Hold it together just a little longer. Later that afternoon, with the worst of the fish drama behind you and the amphorae finally stacked in quiet, briny rows, you take a moment to breathe. The heat has mellowed, the air now thick and slow-moving, like syrup laced with seawater. Somewhere, a flute plays a soft, meandering tune. It drifts through the alley like a cat that doesn't quite care where it ends up. You lean against the doorframe, rubbing your sore shoulder, when voices from around the corner catch your ear. Not angry ones, for once, just loud, excited chatter with bursts of laughter. You wander down the alley to investigate, Lucius trailing behind. Around the bend, In the shade of a collapsed awning, you find a few other local workers, olive oil boys, brick haulers. One guy, you're fairly sure, sells counterfeit honey all gathered in a lazy circle. At the center of their attention is Publius, a barrel-chested man with arms like cured hams and the storytelling flair of a street actor with nothing left to prove. He's mid-rant, waving a piece of bread like a dagger. And I told him, if you think your garum tastes better, let's see it survive 3 gladiators and a dropkick from a horse. Laughter erupts. You recognize the tone. Publius is retelling his near-legendary tale of that one time his fish sauce shipment was nearly destroyed by a runaway chariot, only to emerge victorious, a little shaken, and slightly more fragrant. Someone spots you. Oi, fish sauce man, you made this mess. You raise a hand, proudly. Publius grins and offers a nod. You still making that dark batch, the one that smells like Zeus's laundry? It aged, you reply, like fine wine in a haunted tomb. More laughter. You settle into the circle, accepting a hunk of bread from someone's lunch and tearing off a piece. The camaraderie is rough but familiar. These are your people, the hard-working, half-sweaty, half-salty backbone of Ostia's food trade. The conversation drifts. Someone brings up the latest gladiator lineup at the amphitheater. A few groans emerge. One of the fighters has already broken 3 noses, 2 of them in the crowd. He's the size of a wine vat, someone says, and smells worse. I thought that was the wine vat, another adds. You chuckle, chewing slowly, letting the bread soak up the last of your stress. Then the tone shifts. Did you hear about Marcia's cousin, a young man pipes up? The one who married that spice merchant? No, the other one. He says there's a nobleman rich, real Roman toes and tunic type, been buying up garum. Not just any garum, special orders, export. There's a pause. Even Publius stops mid-crumb. You lift your brow. Export where? He didn't say just somewhere far, east. Maybe no one's seen the guy. He sends a steward with a list. High prices, super picky, real mysterious. You exchange a glance with Lucius, who does his best impression of someone not obviously listening with both ears and his entire soul. Probably nothing, someone mutters. Rich people get bored. Next week he'll be importing milk from goats that speak Greek. But the seed's planted. A customer with deep pockets, buying garum in bulk. That kind of interest could mean a big shift for good or ill. You file the detail away in your mental ledger, alongside repair back gate, and teach Lucius how to identify spoiled mullet without poking it. As the conversation drifts again, you hear someone bring up the scandal of the week. Apparently, a local senator's nephew has been caught using imported cinnamon in everything. Not just desserts, also soup, wine, and, outrageously, a foot balm. You can smell him coming, someone says, shaking their head, like dessert gone wrong. Historians still argue whether spices were status symbols or just excuses for terrible cooking. Judging by the noise from this group, it's definitely the former. No one trusts a man who seasons too confidently. You linger in the gathering a while longer, sipping from a shared wine flask, laughing at yet another story about a cursed amphora that allegedly cried at night. It turned out to be leaking into the neighbor's bedroom. There were legal consequences. Eventually, the group begins to drift apart, some returning to shops, others to carts, one to what he claims is a goat massage appointment. You stretch, your back popping like it's been storing marbles, and head slowly toward the workshop again. Lucius is quiet as he walks beside you. What do you think about that nobleman, he finally asks. Wouldn't hurt to have a rich client. Wouldn't hurt. You agree. Wouldn't help either. If he decides he wants the sauce to smell like saffron and unicorns. Do unicorns smell good? No, you say they smell like liability. Back in the shop, the afternoon light is golden and low, slanting through the doorway in long, honeyed beams. Dust dances in the air like bored fairies. You sit on your stool behind the counter, stretching your legs and letting your body cool just slightly before the next inevitable interruption. Lucius perches on a barrel. "Do you think someone will ever make a better sauce than garum?" he asks. You pretend to think hard. "Only if they discover ketchup," you say solemnly. "And even then, they'll need a good fish catapult." He blinks. "What's a ketchup?" "Exactly." Not long after your return, as you're scratching notes onto a wax tablet and idly poking a suspicious crack in one of the amphorae, a shadow darkens the doorway. A large one. And it's not just someone bulky, it's someone who moves like they've never had to explain themselves to anyone in their life. He steps inside without asking, wearing a spotless tunic trimmed in purple thread. His sandals are polished, his nose slightly upturned. Clearly has never sniffed anything that wasn't personally blessed by a household god. You don't recognize the face, but you recognize the type. "Are you the garum merchant?" he asks, voice like warm marble. You stand up slowly. "I am. If you're selling insurance or religion, I'm full up on both." He doesn't smile. "I've come on behalf of my patron. He's requested a special order." You glance over at Lucius, who is now very obviously pretending to not eavesdrop while inching closer with every breath. "A special order," you repeat. "Well, lucky me. Most people just want sauce that doesn't explode." The man steps closer and produces a scroll from his satchel. He unrolls it with delicate fingers, fingernails far too clean for anyone who's ever picked a fishbone out of their sandal. You peer at the list. It's detailed, ridiculously so. 7 jars, each to be aged a different length. Specific ratios of mackerel to anchovy. 1 jar with coriander, another with fig syrup, 1 with crushed pine nuts, and a note, "Do not stir after sealing." You look up. Is this a recipe or a ransom note? "My patron expects only the finest," the man says evenly. He's hosting a gathering of discerning taste. You raise a brow. Would your patron happen to have a name? He prefers discretion. Of course he does. Historians still argue whether wealthy Romans sought out rare garum for flavor or simply to show off. Based on this scroll, you're leaning toward the latter. This order isn't about eating, it's about display. A feast where the sauce has a better seat than half the guests. Still, the man produces a small pouch and sets it on the counter. You open it. Coins. Real ones. Heavy. Enough to fix your roof. Bribe the inspector. And still have change for wine that won't peel your gums. You seal the scroll with a nod. "Give me 3 days." He bows slightly. "We'll send a runner." Then he turns and glides out the door, not so much walking as evaporating into the alley. You and Lucius stare at each other. "Well, Lucius says, that was ominous." You grunt. "That was profitable." He leans over the counter. "What if he's one of them?" You blink. "One of who?" "You know, them secret spice cults, food poisoners, ghost tasters." You pause. "Ghost tasters." It's a theory. You tap the counter. 3 days. Get me coriander, pine nuts, and something to stir them with that won't absorb the shame. On it. As Lucius rushes off, you stare at the scroll again. The level of detail, the handwritten notes, the little doodle of a fish in the margin. It's either from a nobleman or a bored senator with too much wine and not enough hobbies. You begin prepping the first jar, measuring out the anchovy paste and salt, adding a dash of date wine, and whispering a small prayer to Mercury that this concoction doesn't bubble through its seal and curse your whole inventory. Later, just as you're packing the last jar, your neighbor stops by. Titus, the olive oil guy. Always smells like resin and good advice. "Busy?" he asks, eyeing your work. only slightly overwhelmed by shadowy clients and boutique fish sauce. He chuckles. You always get the fun ones. You shrug. At least this one paid in advance. He peers closer. Are those pine nuts? You nod. I had someone ask for garum with rose petals once, he says. Said it reminded them of their mother's garden. What did it actually smell like? Grief. You both laugh. The kind of laugh that smells like sweat and experience. Titus slaps your shoulder, leaves you a small pouch of fresh oil just in case the sauce tries to fight back, and continues on his way. You cork the final jar and affix a strip of cloth around the seal, then stamp it with your emblem. The whole set sits neatly on the shelf, radiating the kind of smugness only expensive condiments can muster. You step back, cross your arms, and let out a long, slow breath. This might be your strangest order yet. And strangely, you're proud of it. Lucius returns just in time to trip over a broom. Next batch, he asks. You nod. We're calling this one Rich People's Regret. The following morning begins with a quiet, you don't trust. Too quiet. No screaming merchants, no clattering carts, no chicken flapping into your storeroom uninvited. Even the neighborhood goat seems to have taken the day off. It's the kind of hush that usually comes right before something leaks, breaks, or bursts into suspicious flames. You step out into the workshop, where the sunlight slices through the rafters in clean lines, illuminating specks of dust floating peacefully in the air. For a moment, you dare to believe the day might be manageable. Then Lucius shouts, "Fire!" You don't even ask, you just run. Around the corner, in the small side yard where you sometimes dry out herb bundles and store extra stoppers. A faint curl of smoke is rising. You burst through the gate to find one of the small clay ovens glowing red hot, much hotter than it ever should be. One of the drying racks above it has caught, and the flames are licking upward, looking for a new friend. Lucius is flapping a wine-stained rag at it, which only seems to be encouraging the blaze. You snatch a bucket of brine from nearby and hurl it with practiced despair. The flames sputter, hiss, and die with a wet sulk. A gout of smoke puffs up, hits your face, and reminds you why salt and fish juice make poor extinguishers. Well, you say, coughing. At least the fire smells delicious. Lucius pokes the charred rack. That was our good linen. No, you correct. That was our least holy linen. You both survey the damage: scorched plaster, a singed crate of rosemary, and one melted amphora lid that now resembles a startled snail. Still, nothing exploded. By your standards, this is a mild inconvenience. Back inside, you begin scrubbing the soot off your arms while Lucius fans the doorway to keep smoke from overwhelming the main storeroom. As the air clears, the scent of charred herbs mingles with the more familiar aroma of brine and old fish. For a brief moment, it almost smells like an intentional dish. You shake your head. Add fireproofing to the to-do list, you mutter. He flips open the wax tablet. Before or after, replace exploded vat from last week. You sigh, just draw a star next to it. You return to work bottling the custom order for the mysterious nobleman. The fig syrup batch has settled nicely overnight, thicker than standard garum, with a glossy sheen and fewer visible chunks than anticipated. You pour it carefully into its jar and apply a double seal, then a wax stamp that reads, "Handle with humility." The pine nut batch, well, it's complicated. The nuts float. They also smell vaguely of furniture. You're not sure whether that's a feature or a mistake, but you push forward anyway. You cork it tightly and say a small prayer to every food-related deity you can think of, including one you invent on the spot called Saucius, patron of regretful recipes. Midway through your work, your neighbor's apprentice appears in the doorway. "You've got a delivery by the docks, that big one," he says, with the mule that doesn't like you. You nod. wiping your hands on your tunic. That narrows it down to 3 mules. You load 2 jars into a basket and set off, Lucius trailing behind with the delivery list. The heat outside is sticky and thick now, like the city's been brushed with a layer of fish-flavored honey. As you weave through the alleys, you catch snippets of life, an old man shouting at his cup of wine, a group of children chasing a dog with a laurel wreath on its head, and 2 women arguing loudly about whether last night's thunderstorm was a bad omen or just bad plumbing. You finally arrive at the docks, where the world gets bigger and louder all at once. Ships creak in their moorings, gulls wheel overhead, and longshoremen shout over crates of amphorae and baskets of fruit. Somewhere nearby, someone is playing a lute poorly and with confidence. You spot your contact easily, a man with 1 eyebrow and a cart loaded high with other merchants' goods. And, yes, the mule, the one that once bit your sleeve and possibly your dignity. You approach cautiously. Morning. The mule snorts. The man gestures toward the cart. Put it wherever it won't leak. You hand him the jars, watching carefully as he wedges them between a crate of olive oil and a suspiciously wrapped bundle labeled "Do Not Shake." He signs your wax tablet with a symbol that might be a name or a shrug, and disappears back into the chaos of dock life. You turn to Lucius. Let's go before the mule decides it wants a snack. As you head back toward the shop, Lucius asks, do you ever wonder what happens to our sauce once it leaves? You think about it. Sometimes I imagine it on a senator's plate. You say, other times, I think it gets poured into a pot, mixed with honey, and forgotten until it becomes sentient. He nods. Do you think people ever talk about our garum? You glance up at the sky, the lazy swirls of cloud drifting above the city. I think they talk about the smell, you say, whether they love it or hate it. No one forgets it. Back at the shop, the fire is just a memory and the shelves are stacked again. The strange order is nearly complete. The sun is beginning to dip, casting warm shadows across the flagstones, and the air finally begins to loosen its sweaty grip. You look around. Nothing's currently on fire. No amphorae are leaking. The mule is nowhere in sight. It might be a good evening. You decide to take a walk. Not for deliveries, not for errands, not even for fish. Just a walk for the rare indulgent act of not doing anything fish-related for 15 whole minutes. Lucius waves you off with exaggerated concern, as if unsure you'll return uninjured or unslimed. You toss a piece of dried fig in his direction and slip into the lazy glow of early evening. Ostia's harbor is always humming. The sea sparkles like someone spilled polished coins across it, and the docks never truly quiet buzz with the business of a city that feeds, trades, and ferments its way into relevance. You walk slowly, letting your limbs unspool and your brain air out. The path along the quay is uneven and cracked from decades of salt and sandals. You dodge around a merchant haggling over the weight of a tuna, then a pair of dockhands arguing over who gets to sleep in the hammock tonight. You're pretty sure the smaller one wins purely by volume. You reach your favorite spot, a little outcropping behind a grain warehouse, where the stone slopes down to the water's edge. It smells only faintly of fish here, and mostly of salt, wood, and the pleasant wet hush of waves lapping at the shore. The scent of tar from nearby ship repairs mingles in, creating that uniquely Roman cocktail of commerce and decay. You sit on a low crate and exhale slowly. From here, you can see ships in every stage of readiness, one being loaded with barrels, another still tied up with its sails furled, and another that seems to be entirely crewed by men with the same beard. It's unnerving. You wonder where they're all headed. Alexandria, Carthage. The icy edges of Britannia, where people wear furs and probably eat tree bark. You imagine one of your jars crossing the sea, swaddled in straw, rocking gently below deck, beside jugs of oil and wine. You hope someone opens it slowly. You really hope they don't store it near the sleeping quarters. As you watch the boats, and the birds circling above, you realize someone's approaching. You glance sideways and recognize her Julia, the potter's daughter, carrying a bundle of clay tiles under one arm and a basket under the other. "Fancy seeing you out here," she says, not slowing her step. "I'm allowed to wander, just once a year." She smirks. "You still making that fish potion?" You raise a brow. You still sculpting pots that crack in the rain. "Touché." She sits beside you on the crate, sets down the basket, and pulls out a half loaf of bread and 2 small olives. Trade. You shrug. "Only if the olives don't bite." You share the simple meal and watch the horizon. The sun is lowering now, slanting gold across the water, blinding anyone foolish enough to look straight at it. You chew slowly, feeling your jaw unclench for the first time all day. "Do you like it?" she asks suddenly. You glance at her. "What?" "The bread." "No, the job, the smell, the sauce." You think for a moment. A seagull dives too hard nearby and skims the water with a squawk of embarrassment. It's honest. You say, "It feeds people. It's disgusting. And it's mine." She nods like she understands. "I hate clay," she says softly, "but I love pots." You both fall quiet again. Historians still argue whether everyday Roman laborers saw themselves as part of something larger part of the empire. The machine, the myth, sitting here, watching cargo ships drift out toward the edge of the world. It's hard not to feel at least slightly important, even if your contribution smells like a failed ocean. You eventually stand and stretch, brushing crumbs from your tunic. I should head back. Lucius probably tried to feed the cat again and lost a finger. Julia waves lazily. "Come by next time your amphorae need new stoppers." "I will," you say. "Maybe you can sell me one that doesn't explode." "No promises." You walk slowly back toward the heart of the city, the smells intensifying with every step. Grilled meat, boiled lentils, something fried and sweet that makes your stomach rumble again, even though you just ate. You pass a man lecturing 3 bored teenagers about the greatness of Cato. You pass a barber cutting hair while standing on a crate. You pass a statue of a local magistrate wearing a toga and a facial expression that says, "Yes, I do in fact disapprove of your sandals." And finally, you pass the bakery. You stop. Its windows are open, warmth spilling out, along with the scent of honeyed buns and baked cheese and pure, unfiltered happiness. You step inside and buy 2 small loaves, the fancy kind, studded with dried fruit and wrapped in fig leaves. For Lucius, and maybe the cat. Back at the shop, the light is soft and golden. The jars are still in place. No fires, no leaks, just the gentle silence of a workshop doing its best to behave. You place one of the loaves on Lucius's stool and sit down beside it, letting the evening sink into your skin. The sea is out there, and so is your sauce. And for now, that's enough. The sun has dipped low now, dragging long amber shadows across the floor of your workshop. The city outside is beginning to hush slowly, stubbornly, like a child being told to go to bed. The loudest noises now come from shutters being closed, goats being coaxed home, and someone in the distance tuning a lyre very poorly and very confidently. You're double-checking the seals on tomorrow's shipment when you hear a knock. A precise knock, not the clumsy thud of a neighbor or the chaotic pounding of a late delivery boy. 3 neat taps, spaced evenly. You open the door and there he is again, the silent steward from the mysterious nobleman. Same tunic, same polished sandals, same air of carefully practiced blankness. Without a word, he hands you a sealed scroll. You break it open. More instructions, a second order. This one's even stranger, 3 more jars, all to be started tomorrow, and each more specific than the last. One calls for goat's vinegar as a base, Another demands a single layer of fermented shallots. And the third must be aged for precisely 28 days no more, no less beneath a cedar shelf in darkness. You look up slowly. Is your patron assembling a sauce or summoning something? The steward does not laugh. You didn't expect him to. I'll need more amphorae, you say, and privacy, and possibly divine intervention. He gives a shallow nod, produces another hefty pouch of coins, and disappears into the gathering dusk. You close the door, roll your eyes skyward, and mutter, what next? Fish sauce with sapphires. Lucius, who has materialized behind you like an underfed ghost, says, Do sapphires ferment? You don't answer. You're too busy rereading the scroll, trying to decipher whether cedar shelf is metaphor or literal storage advice. Either way, it's your problem now. You place the scroll on your workbench and light a new oil lamp. The flame flickers to life, casting shadows that make the amphorae look taller, older, vaguely sinister. You grab your ledger and begin a new page. Project Aristocrat's Madness. You're only a few lines in when there's another sound, soft this time, a dull thud. You freeze. Another thud. You glance around. Then you see it. One of the sealed amphorae one from yesterday's bold blend is moving, slightly, rocking in place like a drunk on a gently swaying ship. You step forward, crouch, and squint. The jar quivers again. You touch it. A sudden pop, like a belch from the underworld, and the stopper lifts a full inch before slamming back down. A tiny wisp of briny steam hisses out from the side. You leap back. Lucius. He leans in from the door. Yes. This one's alive. He sighs, grabs a towel, and helps you reseal it with a thicker layer of wax. You both press down hard, whispering soothing lies to the sauce inside. I think it's angry, he mutters. Wouldn't you be stuck in a jar with shallots and crushed fennel? Once sealed again, the jar settles, quiet, behaved. For now. Historians still argue whether Roman garum was a living product, bubbling, evolving, hissing its displeasure, or simply smelled that way. You know better. You've met jars that wept, one that screamed, another that knocked itself off a shelf in what you're pretty sure was protest. You log the event in your ledger, code possible possession. Lucius returns to sweeping, half-heartedly pushing fish scales toward the corner where they'll join the shrine of unclaimed sandals and dust. The cat appears again, now visibly rounder than yesterday, and curls up beside the oven like she owns it. She probably does. The door creaks open once more. This time it's your friend Titus, the olive oil man, holding a jar in one hand and a very tired smile in the other. Got a return, he says. You eye the jar. It's one of yours. What's wrong with it? Nothing. Lady of the house says it offends her curtains. You take the jar and sniff it. Tell her curtains are weak. He chuckles. You know, when you started this business, I thought you'd last 2 months before joining the sponge sellers. Same? And now. You gesture at the quiet jars, the bubbling vats, the lazy cat, and the pile of wax tablets filled with orders from across the empire. I'm Rome's most accidentally successful sauce dealer. He claps your shoulder and walks out, whistling. You set the returned jar on a shelf and mark it "Reseal" for someone with no curtains. Night has begun to settle in. You light a few more lamps. The shop glows warm and soft, all golden flicker and fishy shadows. Outside, voices are lower now, dinner murmurs, evening gossip, the musical clatter of dishes being stacked or dropped. You sit on your stool and rest your chin on your hands. Lucius slumps beside you. The cat snores. For a brief, sleepy moment, there's nothing but stillness. Then, from somewhere upstairs, a crash. You look at Lucius. He looks at you. You both sigh in unison. Tomorrow, you say, and for once, that's enough. The next morning, your body wakes up before your mind. Your eyes open, but your brain is still somewhere deep in a dream involving a fish wearing a toga and shouting legal terms. You sit up slowly, joints protesting like old floorboards. You sniff your tunic. It's passable, or you've just gone nose blind. Downstairs, the shop is silent, too silent. You peer out the window. No one yelling. No carts careening down the alley. The cat is perched on the neighboring roof, blinking slowly at the rising sun like it's a personal inconvenience. You pad into the storeroom. Everything looks mostly in place. A few sealed amphorae sit quietly like well-behaved children. The special order jars are still sealed. One of them has developed a small puff in its wax cap. You note it, press it gently, and make a vague promise to check again before it blows a cork through the ceiling. Lucius appears behind you with a piece of flatbread in his mouth and hair sticking up like he wrestled a goose. "Morning," he mumbles. "Status." He points at the wall. No new leaks. One jar burped, and the cat brought us something. You follow his finger to a small pile of gifts at the threshold. A dead lizard, a tuft of wool, and, alarmingly, a tooth. You decide not to ask. After a quick inspection of your tools, you begin assembling ingredients for the nobleman's second round of absurdly specific sauces. One amphora requires layers fish, salt, crushed garlic, goat's vinegar, herbs. Repeat. You measure carefully, moving with the slow precision of a man diffusing a very salty bomb. Lucius watches you, then says, "You know, if you mess that layering up, a senator might yell at you." You squint at him. "Why do you say that like it's fun?" He shrugs. Better than a gladiator, or the emperor, or the emperor's parrot. You blink. The emperor doesn't have a parrot. Not yet. The layering finished. You cover the jar and carry it to the darkest corner of the storeroom. You set it gently beneath a shelf made of cedar planks salvaged from an old shipping crate. Not ideal, but it smells nice and is, in fact, cedar. Probably. You sit back on your heels and stare at it. You better behave. You whisper to the jar. It does not respond. Suspicious. Then footsteps. Heavy, steady, unmistakably military. You step outside to find a Roman soldier at your door. You blink. Did I commit a crime in my sleep? He doesn't laugh. Few soldiers do. He unrolls a small scroll and reads it with the enthusiasm of a man paid by the word. By order of the Prefectus Portuum, he drones. You are requested to appear this afternoon at the Eastern Docks for a quality assurance review of export goods. You blink. Are you serious? He keeps reading. Failure to comply will result in fines not to exceed 200 sesterces, seizure of questionable goods, or public humiliation. You sigh. I'll be there. He nods and departs, sandals clacking dramatically. You turn to Lucius. What did I do? He shrugs. You exist. That's usually enough. After a quick bite of something vaguely fig-flavored, you prepare your best batch for inspection. It's the amphora marked Select Reserve, mostly safe. You clean the outside, double-wrap the seal, and write for export on a little tag tied with red twine. It looks official, possibly even legitimate. At midday, you arrive at the Eastern Docks with your prize balanced on a cart and your dignity already wearing thin. The inspection booth is staffed by two men, one scribbling furiously on a wax tablet, the other picking his teeth with what looks like a bronze stylus. They glance up. "Fish sauce," the scribbler asks. "Garum," you say, helpfully. "Ah, garum," says the one with the stylus, "the perfume of the poor." You set the amphora down and uncork it. A gentle wave of brine and pride hits the air. Several nearby gulls land, clearly interested. The scribbler leans in, sniffs, frowns. The other man does the same. Then, without warning, he dips a finger into the sauce and tastes it. You freeze. He smacks his lips, thinks. He says. You exhale. Thank you. It has notes of decay, misery, and a little plum. What's in it? You consider lying, then shrug. Mostly fish, some vinegar, a few regrets. He scribbles something on his tablet. Approved, he mutters. You bow slightly, accept the stamped slip of papyrus, and retrieve your jar. As you roll your cart back down the dock, you allow yourself the smallest smile. Not many people get complimented on fermented fish. Back at the shop, Lucius greets you like a returning hero. How was it? They liked it. He blinks. Wait, really? Truly. He raises both arms like you've just conquered Carthage. All hail the Sauce King. You snort. Don't let that catch on. The rest of the afternoon passes peacefully. You bottle a few standard orders, sweep the floor, and finally remove the mystery tooth from the doorway. The cat bats it once and promptly falls asleep on your sandal. As evening descends, golden and gentle, you step outside again. People are already lighting lanterns, preparing for dinner, sitting on stoops. You catch the scent of lentils, cinnamon, and somewhere blessedly far away, someone grilling onions in wine. You take it all in. You, the man who bottles stink for a living, standing at the heart of Rome's salty, noisy, chaotic port. And for once, you don't smell like failure. The next day begins with the peculiar stillness that only arrives before chaos. You wake feeling not refreshed exactly, but at least functional. You sit up, stretch your back until something pops, hopefully a joint, not another amphora, and open the window to let in the morning air. A mistake. The breeze carries with it the scent of your own workshop salt, fermentation, and that one mysterious batch that may or may not be fermenting too quickly. You shut the window halfway, then sigh and pull on your tunic. Downstairs, Lucius is already poking around the new shipment that arrived before dawn. He's sorting fish with the blank stare of a man who has seen too much. We have a problem, he says without turning. You glance at the heap of crates. One of the fish got up and left. Worse, he says, lifting a crate lid. Inside is a mess. What should have been a neat stack of sardines is now a heap of squished, broken bodies swimming in their own regret. The crate wasn't packed properly. It smells like ambition gone wrong. You groan. Who delivered this? Marinus said he packed it himself. That explains everything. Marinus couldn't pack a lunch without losing a thumb. You grab a scoop and begin salvaging what you can. Some fish are still usable if you salt them immediately. Others, well, they'll go to the compost pile. Or to the cat, who appears, as always, at the exact moment the phrase fish scraps crosses your mind. She hops onto the bench with the grace of someone who's never worked a day in her life, and eyes the heap as if inspecting your performance. You flick her a headless sardine. She catches it mid-air and disappears behind a jar. Midway through cleanup, there's a knock at the back door. A hesitant knock. You open it to find young Manius, the donkey cart boy, standing nervously with a wax tablet in one hand and fish sauce smeared on his tunic. I tried to deliver the amphora, he says, eyes wide. But the mule. You brace for it. What about the mule? It collapsed. You blink. In the alley. You blink again. Is it? Alive, yes, but very wet. You follow Manius to the scene, and yes, there it is, the mule, sprawled across the cobblestones like a furry, braying rug, one of your best export jars cracked beside it, puddling garum into a nearby drainage ditch. You kneel beside the wreckage. Why is it always the good sauce, you mutter? Manius shrugs helplessly. It was labeled Delicate Reserve. I thought that meant light. It meant fragile Manius, not featherweight. Lucius arrives just in time to poke the mule gently with a stick. "It's fine," he announces. "Just dramatic." You send Manius off to get help and start gathering what remains of the sauce. It's mostly gone, soaking into the dusty road. The mule licks a little of it and promptly sneezes. "I think that batch had extra garlic," Lucius observes. You salvage the broken amphora and roll it off to the side. The jar's neck is split clean through, the stopper embedded like a trophy. You're tempted to display it as a cautionary tale, or a sculpture titled Commerce. Interrupted. Back at the shop, you brew a strong cup of cumin tea, the poor man's way of pretending you're not covered in fish, and begin crafting a replacement batch. Lucius watches you measure ingredients. You sure you don't want to try something different today? Like, not garum? You glance at him. "I could sell poetry," you say. "It would smell better." He snorts, "Barely." While the replacement brews in the sun, you sit down with your ledger and review orders. The nobleman's second shipment is due tomorrow. You double-check the list: goat vinegar, fig paste, cedar shelf. Absolutely no light exposure. You glance at the sealed jars sitting in your storeroom, each labeled like dangerous potions. One of them sighs audibly. You pretend not to notice. Later that afternoon, while bottling a small jar for a particularly picky herbalist, you hear a clatter. Not a drop or a spill, more like something being overturned. You rush outside to find Lucius holding a broom like a spear. He points dramatically. "There was a rat." You frown. "One rat?" "A bold rat." You follow his finger and spot the overturned crate. Sure enough, a scruffy rat with more confidence than common sense is gnawing its way through a sack of dried olives. It looks up at you like it's considering charging. You toss a sardine head at it. It flinches and scurries away. "Tell your friends," you mutter. Back inside, you finish sealing the last jar of the afternoon. You press your fish-stamped seal into the wax with pride and exhaustion. The shop is calm again. For now. Outside, the light shifts to that rich, end-of-day amber, the kind that turns even dust motes into something beautiful. You wipe your hands on a clean cloth well, cleanish and lean in the doorway. Across the street, two women are discussing someone's love life in scandalized whispers. A boy kicks a walnut down the alley like it owes him money. And from a nearby window, the sound of someone singing softly drifts down with the breeze. You close your eyes and breathe it all in the sea air, the city's rhythm, the underlying hum of commerce and chaos. And yes, the faintest trace of fish. But somehow, it doesn't bother you today. The sun has finally begun to fall behind the rooftops, casting your corner of Ostia in a warm, honeyed glow. The city exhales slower now, softer. The hustle of the markets has faded, the shouting has quieted, and even the animals seem to have taken the hint. It's the moment Rome turns from shouting to murmuring. Inside the workshop, everything is in place. For once. The amphorae stand like silent sentinels along the back wall, their wax seals cooling in the evening air. A few are marked with cloth tags, your nobleman's special order, ready for pickup in the morning. Not a crack, not a hiss, not even the faint bubbling you've come to associate with bad news in sauce form. Lucius is perched on a stool, fiddling with a stick of sealing wax, melting it slightly with a nearby lamp, and then drawing crude faces on the countertop. "That one's you," he says, pointing to a blob with two startled dots for eyes. "I look tired," you reply. "You are." You both fall into a comfortable silence. After a while, Lucius speaks again, this time more quietly. "You ever think about quitting?" You glance at the rows of jars, the faint smell of garlic and fish still lingering in the cracks of the floor. the cat curled up inside the empty shipping crate, snoring softly. Sure, you say, especially on days when mules collapse, rats riot, and sauce explodes. He nods slowly, but you never do. You stretch your legs out, cracking one knee like a stepping stone in a bathhouse. Nope, because someone has to feed the Empire's obsession with smelling like the wrong side of a fish. He laughs. Besides, you add, I don't know how to do anything else this well, not even breathing. He grins and tosses the wax stub at your head. You dodge it easily. Experience. You both sit and watch the light fade across the workshop walls. The golden tones shift to soft amber, then to the gentle gray of dusk. You light a few more oil lamps. Their warm glow bounces against the jars and turns the shadows soft and long. The nobleman's steward arrives just as the last sliver of sunlight disappears. As always, he says nothing, just a nod. He loads the jars into a padded basket, checks the seals, then hands you another coin pouch. This one heavier than the last. You offer a quiet thank you to the silence he leaves behind. After he's gone, you and Lucius lock up. The courtyard is empty now, the last bits of light dancing across the paving stones. You both step onto the roof of the building, something you only do when the day's finally over. Up here, the air is cooler. The breeze carries a soft hush from the ocean and a distant echo of conversation, of clinking pottery, of music being practiced poorly but earnestly. You sit on the low wall. Lucius sits beside you, nibbling the last of the fruit bread you bought yesterday. I used to think garum was disgusting, he says. Still kind of do. You smirk. But I think I get it now, he adds. It's like gross magic. You nod slowly. Exactly. It's turning rot into flavor, decay into gold. Into dinner, he corrects. Into dinner, you agree. Below, the lamps of Ostia flicker to life, one by one, a warm constellation of human life. In the distance, you can see the harbor. A ship sails out into the dark, lantern glowing at its prow. You wonder briefly and with surprising fondness if your sauce is on board, sealed tight in clay and twine, heading toward some far-off banquet table. Do you think they'll remember us? Lucius asks. You consider. No, you say gently, but they'll remember the taste. You sit together until the stars begin to appear. No crises, no alarms, no burning ovens or brawling donkeys. Just peace. And the faint, comforting stink of success. And now, the harbor grows quiet. The ships are still. The carts have all returned to their corners. The mule is thankfully no longer blocking the alley. And even the cats have curled themselves into sleepy commas beneath the amphora racks. The lights of Ostia flicker dimly below, and the last embers of the sun are long gone. The sky above has slipped into deep violet, with a scattering of stars just beginning to show through. Everything feels slower now, softer. Your hands, tired and slightly fishy, rest on your lap. You've worked hard today, moved crates, sealed jars, survived flaming linen, angry mules, and nobles with overly sensitive noses. And yet, you made it. You did more than just make sauce. You fed a city. You bottled the sea. You turned chaos into commerce, fish into flavor, and stink into something almost sacred. The breeze drifts over you now cool, clean, tinged with the distant salt of the sea, and the last wafts of roasted garlic from someone's supper. The world feels hushed, content, and so do you. You close your eyes. Tomorrow, there will be new orders, new leaks, possibly new rodents. But for now, there's only stillness. Only night. Only the soft murmur of waves brushing the dock. You are not just a garum merchant. You are part of the rhythm of this place, ancient, strange, essential. And as the stars settle overhead and the gentle darkness folds around you, you can let go. You can let the day fall away. Because you've done enough. You've done more than enough. Sleep well now, Roman merchant. The jars will wait.